Dear students, welcome back. Now we are going to see joints inside the temporomandibular joint. As we know that the disc in the TM joint divides the joint into two separate joint spaces. So here you will get upper joint space and the lower joint space. The upper joint space is larger than that of the lower, and each joint space has its own synovial lining. All of these joint surfaces except the articulating surfaces are covered with synovial membrane. That means already the articular surfaces are covered by fibrocartilage, isn't it? That means over the mandibular condyle and also on the articular eminence. These are the articular surfaces of the temporomandibular joint. At this areas it is covered with fibrocartilage, and the remaining joint space is covered by synovial membrane. Okay, the nutrition of the fibrocartilage covering the joint surfaces and the avascular middle portion of the disc is provided by the synovial fluid. That means the fibrocartilage is not having any vascular supply. That means it doesn't get the nutrition. So, and also the middle portion of the disc is also avascular, so it doesn't require the nutrition is not coming to this middle portion. That one is carried out by the synovial membrane, synovial fluid. Okay, so how this is taking place means the intermittent pressures on these collagenous structures during joint motion causes the synovial fluid to be pumped in and out of them. So synovial fluid is pumped in to the joint cavity and also out of the joint cavity due to the pressures created inside the joint structures. So by moving in and out of the joint cavity, so in this process the synovial fluid is providing the nutrition to the joint cavity. Okay, so this is about the joints and its coverings present inside the temporomandibular joint. And now coming to the lower joint, if you can see the lower joint, so this is the lower joint. So this lower joint is formed by the condyle, the anterior surface of the condyle of the mandible and the inferior surface of the disc. Anterior surface of the condyle of the mandible and the inferior surface of the disc forms the lower joint. The condyle and disc are firmly attached. The condyle and discs are firmly attached on the medial and lateral poles of the condyle. These attachments allow free rotation of the disc. This attachment allows free rotation of the disc on the condyle or the condyle on the disc. So the attachment of this helps in the rotation of articular disc on the condyle or rotation of condyle on the disc. Okay, so because of this, articular disc and the mandibular condyle attachment helps in the rotation of the condyles on the disc, or rotation of the disc on the condyle. So how it takes place means the rotation of the condyle forward results in backward rotation of the disc. Okay, because of the firm medial and lateral attachment cause the disc and condyle to glide as a unit. So they are rotating simultaneously. And as a unit. That means it is moving forward. That means the articular disc is moving backward. So there is a minimal translation between the two surfaces. So gliding is very minimal in this joint. The major rotation is taking place. So it is anterior rotation of the condyle causes posterior rotation of the disc. For example, if the posterior rotation of the condyle, then it causes anterior rotation of the disc. So this is about the lower joint. Now we will see the upper joint in the temporomandibular joint. The upper joint of the temporomandibular joint is a gliding joint. The lower one is a hinge joint. The upper one is a gliding joint. So it is formed by the articular eminence. This is the articular eminence of the temporal bone and the superior surface of the articular disc. So there is no direct attachments of disc to temporal bone. Here we are having attachments to the poles of the mandibular condyles in the lower joint, but in the upper joint there is no direct attachment of disc with that of the temporal bone. So thereby, because such kind of arrangement in the upper joint causes gliding motion. So that means like this is called gliding motion. There is no rotation, so gliding motion taking place here. Okay, so the gliding motion of the articular disc, that is simply we can call it as translation of the articular disc on the temporal bone. So the middle portion of the disc is the articular surface of the disc. The middle portion of the disc is called as the articular surface of the disc. So it is having anterior, middle and the posterior portions, out of which the middle portion is the articulation part or articular surface of the disc, and it translates forward, and this part translates forward with the condyle during the opening of the mouth to maintain contact with the articular eminence. That is, the middle portion is in contact with the articular eminence during opening of the mouth. So this is about the upper joint. So in the next session we are going to see the articular disc in detail. Thank you.